Good evening, dynamic current viewers. Welcome to another episode of Insight. You are here with Daniel Hayes and
Andrew Blackmer.
this show, Insight, is brought to you by Octet Solutions and Blissful Blessings Events. So, today we're here to talk to you about a variety of timely issues. Should we start off with perhaps the Boston Marathon bombing, Andrew?
Yeah. The explosions on Monday happened at 2:45 p.m., right towards the end of the Boston Marathon. It's a pretty big race that they run every year.
Yeah, I hear one of the, or the premier marathon of the country here.
Oh yeah, definitely. 3 people, I think, have been confirmed dead. Lots of people have been injured. I think over 100 was the last estimate I saw who were injured. Some people have had amputations, things like that. It's a rather very unfortunate, tragic event.
Yeah, it's certainly a tragic event. A terrible shame. You know, our thoughts and prayers go out to all of the victims and their families.
Absolutely.
It's very disappointing that things like that still happen in the world. What's also disappointing, I think, is the way that the media covers this so irresponsibly.
Oh yeah, oh definitely. Almost immediately after the bombings were reported, you had wild speculation right from the beginning.
Right.
You know, who could it be? You know, who did this? What
Right.
could be their motivation? And we heard everything from, you know, right-wing anti-tax people because it was tax day and it was Patriots Day in Boston. You know, one person, I think it was Luke Russert, who tweeted, he said he was at Fenway Park back during Waco when it happened, and he said, oh, that was Patriots Day too, and maybe they're connected because of that, and, you know,
Well,
what does that have to do with anything, right?
well, who knows? I mean, and that's really the point here. I mean, as responsible journalists, you should not be inclined to speculate. I mean,
Unless you have evidence, right? If you have
Exactly.
evidence, then you say, hey, you know, I heard that, you know, that they had a list of suspects, you know, and this is who we think it was. But if you don't have that, why just say, hey, it could be anything from a radical lone gunman, right winger, to, you know, international terrorism, Al Qaeda, you know, name everybody under the sun, right?
Yeah, exactly. It just makes no sense at all. It's like, what is the point of you being a journalist at all if you're not going to give anything more reasonable or insightful than anyone who knows nothing about the situation?
Right. And I think they got, again, duped today. There was a hoax that went off that there was a suspect arrested, and they had to retract the story. Apparently that was totally made up and fake. So, you know, in the rush of trying to be the first to break a story, trying to entertain people when you don't know what's going on,
Right.
they turn to wild speculation. Right?
Yeah, and
Or reporting things that might not be verified.
right.
You know.
And what was the deal with the Saudi Arabian guy who happened to be on the scene and got?
Right. In the couple hours after the explosions, it was reported that they had a Saudi national in custody. He was at the hospital. Apparently, he had been injured.
Why was he in custody?
Apparently, when the bombs went off, he was seen running away from the explosions,
Now,
along with, by the way, pretty much everyone in the area.
Right. Now, if there's a bomb that explodes, I think the natural inclination would be to run away. Right.
I would hope so. I mean, most people, I would assume.
think this definitely falls into the category of racial profiling.
I would agree with you, absolutely. That you know, you don't want to be a brown guy after an explosion of some kind, right?
I mean, that's
That's the message, right? That's the message that is basically being sent, right? By both
Exactly.
the authorities and the media reporting. You know, not, you know, making sure that the context in which he was found was, you know, buried at the bottom of their article somewhere, right?
I don't know what kind of.
And it's not just a consequence for this guy, right? It's a consequence for people who might experience retaliatory attacks, right?
We saw a
who-
lot of that after 9/11.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of that after the war in Iraq, and you know, a variety of other
After
issues.
Iran, at the Iranian Revolution, there was a lot of you know, Iranian businesses that were attacked and other things. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you got to think about that. I mean, you know, free speech. We have free speech. You know, write what you want to write, but you know, you do have to understand that, you know, there are consequences for other people when you write something.
Yeah.
You know.
And what was the deal with it not... I remember watching the news shortly after it happened, and there was a delay in declaring it a terrorist attack. It was like, we don't know if it's a terrorist attack, it might be a terrorist attack. Now, in my opinion, if you set a bomb off at the end of a marathon, it's terrorism. You know, the way that I would define it. And I think most reasonable people would define that as well. So...
I think there was unsaid
Yes.
messages, being sent when they say, "Is this terrorism?"
And that's precisely what I'm getting at. It's as if we want to confirm that it was Muslims or Islamic fundamentalists, whatever that's supposed to mean.
people screaming in a scary language
You
who
know,
want to, blow up innocent people.
the outsiders, the people from a Middle Eastern country, or the Arab, pseudo-Arab. I mean, why are they now identified as the poster terrorist? I mean, if we look at terrorism, we could look at the Ku Klux Klan, for instance, which is the oldest existing terrorist group formed in this country. They're still around.
Absolutely.
Who's going after them?
Terrorism is just a violent act designed to achieve an end.
And ruin somebody's day.
Right. Well, yeah, absolutely. And if it's doing that, then it's terrorism. It doesn't matter if it's the guy next door or somebody in another country.
Yeah.
Muslim, Christian, Jewish, atheist, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's all the tactics and the idea and the thought behind it, not who they are, culturally or ethnically.
Right.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, the media, in their coverage of this, I was watching a little bit of CNN, and they had one of their national security experts who said, hey, I don't know what's going on, but it could be. It could be this.
It could be.
It could be this.
Yes.
Well, of course it could be.
Maybe
Flip a
it
coin,
was
right?
Biz Marquee.
Yeah.
Perhaps he started beatboxing and went crazy. Who knows? But that's totally irresponsible to make some sort of claims like
Absolutely.
this.
Absolutely.
Because it's suggestive.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and it's suggestive, and it doesn't do the audience any justice. It doesn't enhance the story. If you say, hey, it could, we know that they've been publishing, it's always they, right?
Yes.
They've been publishing
The amorphous
magazines.
they.
Yeah. They've been
Yes.
publishing magazines telling.
Inspired
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
jihadist or something. And please, if anyone can tell me what relation murdering innocent people at a sporting event has to do with jihad, I'd really like to know, because I don't see any sort of connection.
Or for that matter, if anybody has any evidence as to, right? If you're sitting on the evidence here, you could be sitting on the story of the year, right? If you've got evidence that says somebody from Inspire is involved in this, right?
Well, hey, if you have evidence, let us know. What's our tweet? Insight DC 2013 at Twitter?
Absolutely,
Tweet
yes.
us. Let us know what's going on. We'll be happy to report on it for you. So, that's that. I wanted to talk about... I want to talk a little bit about money today. That's kind of like
Quite,
my go-to subject.
Yeah, well,
I
it's
guess,
also
right?
somewhat timely. I mean, the stock market had a little bit of a hit after on Monday. Might not be related to the explosions, but it had a little bit of a hit, and then it rebounded the next day. So, people are interested in, where their money is going and what they can do about it. Or
It was down today, too.
Yeah.
It was a rough day today. But, hey, that goes up and down. And,
Don't short-term invest, right?
yeah.
You're not going to get rich quick playing stocks on the stock market. I don't think.
Well, hey, who knows? Maybe if you invest in the right thing. Just like commercial banks do through a variety of speculating and investing in stocks to make money. The interesting part about that is the money that they're investing typically does not exist in the physical world.
Absolutely.
And that is a result of what we call fractional reserve banking.
Reserve banking.
So,
Ones and zeros on a sheet, right?
Ones and zeros on a sheet, precisely. So, let's explain a little bit about what fractional reserve banking is this. Okay. Now, you're probably familiar with how you manage your own household. get paid, you have an income, you have a budget, you spend money, you trade your cash for goods and services, okay? Now, you have money that you give to others to acquire things, and that's how most people understand money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? Now, this, however, is not typically how banks work. What fractional reserve banking is, and this is essentially the way that banking works here and in most other countries, you will go to the bank for a loan, or you will go to the bank to deposit money. So let's say you go and deposit $100 into the bank. Okay? Now the bank will give you a receipt for that $100 to prove that you have it in their bank. But what the bank will do with that $100 is they will take maybe $90 out of that and invest it. Okay, so that money is gone, and off of that investment, they can borrow against the equity and make other investments.
Absolutely.
So what happens is they're creating money out of thin air. They really don't have money, but they're investing. And
sounds like a good old-fashioned pyramid scheme almost. Right?
It does, doesn't it?
Which you could go to jail for if you or I did something
What's
like that,
happening?
right?
Yeah, but banks are the most heavily subsidized institution in the country. Why is that?
And along with the Federal Reserve central banking system, they have access to plenty of new funds whenever they need it.
Right.
Which right now is near 0% interest on those funds.
Yeah.
Which is basically paying the money to take money.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Paying money to take money. In fact, that's how banks make a lot of their profit.
Absolutely.
They print money and they sell it. So let's say it costs, a couple cents to print a bill, okay? Well, let's say it's $100 bill. So now they're selling it to someone for the value of that bill, the face value. So they're profiting from what? Just
from
new
the way that basically in the way the central banking system here in the United States is set up. It's a private, quasi-private, right? Private-public partnership basically, because the legal tender is a public legal tender, right? But it's issued by a private bank called the Federal Reserve Bank.
Well, the Federal Reserve is, that's not really considered private. That's federal. But you have commercial banks.
No, it's a private institution. It's the chairman of the Fed is appointed by the President of the United States.
Ben Bernanke.
Right. In this case, it's Ben Bernanke. Alan Greenspan is another famous former chair of the Fed.
In my opinion, Alan Greenspan did a bit of a better job than Ben.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who would agree with that assessment. Paul Volcker is another famous example, author of the so-called Volcker Rule that we may or may not get into here. But yeah, there's a chairman of the Fed who's appointed by the president, and there are also regional presidents, and those regional presidents are picked by the member banks of that regional Federal Reserve Bank, and those are all private, right? So you might have Goldman Sachs and Citibank and some others on this chair, and then they pick the person to head that regional Federal Reserve Bank. But it's a private institution with some public trimmings, and obviously being called federal, it has the illusion of being totally a public institution.
Yeah, similar to like the FBI, for example.
Right. Precisely. So that's they basically have a partnership with the banks. There's nominally some strings attached. Right, you have to abide by certain rules that the Federal Reserve sets out for financial institutions. Also, the SEC governs some things as well, but you get access to Federal Reserve funds at their interest rate that they put out.
We'll be back with more information on financial concerns and our physical versus illusionary economy in just a moment. Stay with us. We'll be right back.